Hello and welcome to this edition of the Sales Genius Network webinar series. Today, we're going to aim to what is likely the most important strategic focus for any market-facing, customer-facing, prospect-facing executive out there. And that's, how do you design and execute a successful go-to-market strategy? Now, I don't know about you guys, but in my experience, go-to-market is one of those business terms that, well, it gets tossed around an awful lot, but it's used, like the same term gets used in a whole bunch of different ways that it, frankly, creates as much confusion as it solves. Now, go-to-market strategy is important because, the best way to describe a good go-to-market strategy, it's a lot like having the cheat codes for a video game. And if you don't have a strong go-to-market strategy, then it's like trying to play that same video game nearly blind. Try to mix nearly and virtually together there. So what we want to do today is we want to clarify what is go-to-market strategy, what is go-to-market strategy, so that what we're talking about here today, we're all on the same point, we're all at the same place. Again, not so much from an academic perspective, but just to make sure that we're all focused on what this session is about. And then we're going to get into what really matters. What are the 5 keys? What are the 5 components that you need to nail down to ensure that you're going to have a successful go-to-market strategy, a successful go-to-market approach? But let's get started. First question, what does it mean to have, what does go-to-market mean? And I'm sure you've got your definition. I've got my definition. In preparation for this webinar, I went out into the land of Google, did some research to try to find and consolidate a single, simple to understand definition of what is go-to-market. And I think I found one. I think I put one together. Go-to-market is the strategy that defines how your company will reach target customers. And really it should be, will reach target customers and win them, and ultimately achieve a competitive advantage. Right? Competitive advantages are really important. It's funny, 5-8 years ago, competitive advantage was the buzzword. Everyone was talking about competitive advantage. If you've got a strong go-to-market plan, if you've got a strong go-to-market strategy, you have a competitive advantage. Like I said, it's like having those cheat codes. All right. Now you'll notice in the definition of go-to-market is this other really crazy word used in business all the time, and that's strategy. And I say that somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but I'm also serious. Strategy, even more than go-to-market, gets used more times than I can count. I was actually at a CEO roundtable once, and just for kicks, I decided to count how many times an executive used the term strategy, and I tried to calculate how many different meanings strategy had when they used it. And so there were about 15 executives at the roundtable. I think in a 45-minute conversation, the word strategy got used somewhere around 35 times, and it had basically 35 different definitions. Right? So let's define strategy. And I'm going to go to Richard Romalt, who wrote a great book, Good Strategy, Bad Strategy, who gives a really nice, simple explanation of what strategy is. Strategy is a coherent mix of policies and action to overcome a high-stakes challenge. A good strategy has 3 key elements to it. There's a strong diagnosis that defines the challenge to be overcome, a guiding policy that establishes constraints. And by the way, that's a really, really important component of the definition of strategy. Strategy means to make a decision. We actually wrote a blog post where we highlighted and reviewed Richard's book. We said strategy kills, right? Strategy establishes constraints. So you're saying yes to some things and no to a whole lot of other things. And then the third element is there's a set of coherent actions. So a strong diagnosis, a guiding policy, and a set of coherent actions. 2, target and win customers and create a competitive advantage. You know you have a good go-to-market strategy when you can answer very clearly and distinctly, and by the way, everyone in your company can answer it the same way, when you can answer these 5 questions. What is our business model and how can we best exploit it? Who do we want to be a hero to? Who's our target customer? This provides a clear definition of your ideal client, your personas, the jobs that your ideal clients and personas are trying to do. The third question, how does your value proposition stand out and resonate with your customers? I mean, you might think you're different, but I'm going to ask the question, is your value proposition distinct? Right? How does your value proposition stand out and resonate with customers while distinguishing you from alternative options? And realize alternatives include more than just your direct competitors. They often include indirect competitors. And in a lot of cases, they include just the customer or the prospect taking care of it themselves. As a matter of fact, that's our biggest competitor. Our biggest competitor is companies decide to just do it themselves. Fourth question, how will we position ourselves in our selected markets? Think about that. Selected markets goes back to strategy. Strategy kills. How will we position ourselves in our selected markets to achieve the right message fit that resonates with our target market and stimulates meaningful conversations? And then the last question is, how will we profitably, and we're kind of at a stage where I think I have to emphasize profitably, how will we profitably acquire and retain customers and revenue? Now, I do say profitably here, and again, I had a little bit of tongue in cheek. It's one of those days. Look, if your business model says that profit is equity value, and so it's not about operating profit so much as it is about growing the value of the enterprise, which, in a lot of, especially high tech today, that appears to be a core part of the model. That's fine. I mean, I'll give you an example of an industry where that is true. If you're in sports, if you own a sports franchise, if you make money that year, that's great. And certainly a lot of sports franchises do make money on a year-to-year basis. But where you really make your profit in owning a sports franchise is when you sell it in the future, you sell it at, typically a significant multiple. So, if your profit strategy is something other than what we typically think of as profit, that's fine. But you need to make sure you communicate that clearly and you play to that game. All right, so a good go-to-market strategy answers these 5 questions and puts you in a strong place where you can build on and execute this model, what we call the customer acquisition platform. Now, I'm not going to get into depth on the customer acquisition platform today. We've got a video. You can see it on our homepage. Or if you want me to send you the video, just send us an email, doug@imaginellc.com, or shout out at Twitter at Doug Davidoff and say, hey, let me see the CAP video, and we'll get that to you. But if you're going to grow the business predictably, sustainably, and profitably, and I should say scalably, then you need to build a model that looks, if not exactly like this, very, very similar to this. So that's what a good go-to-market strategy does. It combines the strategy that gives you the ability to answer those 5 questions, to implement a model similar to what you see here and what we like to call the customer acquisition platform. So how do you do that? That's the focus of our program today. Let's get into it. Let's talk about what are the 5 keys to a strong go-to-market strategy. Well, the first thing you've got to do is you've got to figure out some important components around your model. What's your business model? What's your sales model? What's your economic model? Right? Where are you on the business life cycle? Where's your product, your service, your solution, whatever you want to call it? Where is it on the life cycle stage? Right? Because you need to do different things depending upon where you are. Now, for larger companies, you may actually look at this on a product or solution by solution basis. right? Now, I'm going to encourage you that, the best strategy is the simplest strategy, like the simplest to get the job done. So one of the mistakes that happens is, sometimes we embrace a complex strategy and we say, well, I've got this at the visionary stage, this at the, the majority stage, and this at the late majority stage, right? And we do that because we can point to other companies that have been successful with that type of strategy. But in reality, we're actually just being lazy. We're skipping doing the really hard, really difficult thinking. That's an important part of that. So if you're going to go with more than one, make sure that you've got the size and the resources and the wherewithal to deal with the complexity of more than one. For most companies, you'd be far better anchoring yourself in one place, using that as your center of gravity, if you will. So again, this doesn't mean everything you have to do, like 100% is geared to one place, but it means the trade-off decision that you're making is, does this decision that's outside of the norm, does it create any conflict or difficulty for what we've determined to be our core? That's a concept that's going to carry throughout this entire workshop today. So where are you? Are you an early stage business? Are you ramping up? Are you a late stage business? Are you a maintaining business, right? It's far more important to maintain your customers. Like I'll share a great example that I think it's one of the biggest mistakes used in strategy. People talk all the time about BlackBerry and how BlackBerry made a mistake because they missed Apple, right? They missed the iPhone. I think that's a mistake, right? I think BlackBerry actually did the right thing for BlackBerry because, if we really thought about it, who listening or watching this webinar really thinks that BlackBerry could have transformed their company to become consumer-facing, design-focused, mass adoption, and outdone Apple on that? The reality is they would have had to become a completely different company. Now, the mistake that I think Rim, the owner of BlackBerry, made was they tried to convince themselves that the BlackBerry was still, if not in the early adopter phase, at least still in the early majority, when they should have likely identified that it was late majority, which, if anybody's gone to business school or studied a lot of strategy, that's where the product becomes a cash cow. And then you begin to look to identify what is a different new offering that can reinvigorate that growth cycle, right? So there's nothing wrong with being late majority. As a matter of fact, in many cases, in most cases, late majority companies probably actually make more money than earlier stage companies do, right? So where are you? That's going to drive an awful lot of the decisions that you make and the strategy that you design to implement an effective process. Where's the focus of your sales model? Are you selling a product or a service? Is what you're selling a replacement, which means people are already doing it, and specifically there's an existing line item, so you don't have to teach or create the demand or convince anybody of the need for something. And typically when you're a replacement, there's at least a little less change that's involved. Versus, is your solution, does it represent a new capability? Do you need to demonstrate to somebody the value of doing something or being able to do something that they can't do? Is your sales approach, is your sales process, is it geared more to a simple sale? Is it a more complex sale? And I could do an entire workshop. I could do multiple workshops on defining your sales model. But, what is the sales game plan that you're going to implement? Where's the focus? The biggest mistake that we make is we play too many different games, right? Because we keep trying to find the best practice, or we read a story about somebody and what they've done, and we go, oh, wow, I could do that too. And we become like a golfer who has 7 different golf coaches all teaching us to swing differently, right? If anybody's ever seen Charles Barkley swing a golf club, I'm pretty sure that's what happened. Actually, I know it's not what happened, but that's the outcome that you get. And far too many go-to-market strategies look a lot more like Charles Barkley's golf swing than say Ernie Els. And for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, just Google a video of Ernie Els, Google a video of Charles Barkley swinging a golf club. You don't have to be a golf fan because you'll pick it up really fast. What's the purchase cycle? How does your customer behave? Right. When I was a financial advisor, one of the mantras, as a matter of fact, I heard it so frequently and got sick of it, was the trend is your friend. Right. The way the market is behaving is your friend. Stop fighting it all the time. Right. The biggest mistake you could make from an investment standpoint is you're trying to outthink the market. When you think you're smarter than the market, that's when you get yourself into trouble. Well, I see this happening all the time on sales and marketing and go-to-market. We're trying to outsmart our customer. We're not aligning with how our customer goes through their consideration phase. We're not aligning with what their journey to purchase really is, right? And I'm going to tell you, you can influence on the edges, and there are things that you can do to accelerate it. But if you're trying to change how they do something, if you're trying to fundamentally change that journey, so you're fighting that trend, well, I'm not going to tell you you can't do it, because there are companies that have done it. Apple is a great example. They fundamentally changed how we think about and pursue and the journey we go on when buying a phone. As a matter of fact, they introduced the whole concept of the smartphone, right? But take a look at A, how well they had to execute, and B, the resources that it took. So if you don't have a clear picture and a clear map of what your customer's purchase cycle looks like, well, stop talking about go-to-market strategy. Stop talking about strategy. Stop talking about optimizing. As a matter of fact, stop talking about improving, because you're doing everything blind. You're fighting your customer. And so if you're not growing at the rate that you want to grow, if you're not getting the returns that you want to get, well, look in the mirror, right? I'm not saying that you can ever get the journey down 100%, but if you don't have a clear model for it, then you don't even have a place to start, right? And you need to know these things so that you can make sure that what you do is profitable. And that gets to the second part of this model, so the second part of the foundation of a good go-to-market strategy. And that is, what's your economic model? And there are some things that you got to know, right? Different people call it ACV or ASV, average commodity value, or average sale value, basically whatever you want to call it. If you look at a customer that you're working with, you look at your target customer, what's the target revenue that customer will produce in a 12-month period of time? Right now, if you've got a SaaS business and you're on MRR or ARR, that's a very easy number to calculate it. If you're a distributor and you've got customers who buy from you multiple times, you don't want to look at it on a transaction by transaction basis. What I would recommend is, you add it up. How much are they going to produce in that year? Right. And if you don't know what your average sale value is, then, once again, you are throwing darts blindfolded after spinning around a bat 17 times, right? I'm not saying you're not going to hit the target, but it's got a hell of a lot more to do with just pure luck than anything else. Second thing you got to know, what's the lifetime? How long is that customer going to buy from you? See, realize when you acquire a customer, you're really acquiring an asset, right? It's no different than if you were to buy a bond in financial services, right? A customer is going to produce revenue for you for a period of time. That's an asset. You need to know what that asset is worth so you can determine what's a reasonable price to pay to get that asset. What's your churn? Churn in many ways is the reverse of lifetime, right? How much business leaves each year. So if you have 20% churn, which means you lose 20% of your customers every year, then that would mean your average lifetime is 5 years. If your average lifetime is 2 years, then your churn is 50%, right? So those two numbers are highly connected. What's your gross margin? And then what's the average lifetime value? That gets back to what's your average sale value times lifetime times gross margin. That's the value of the asset. You need to understand the sales model here, and this is really kind of the sales economic model. What's your closing rate? What percentage of accounts that reach the last stage of your sales process. They get to the end. It's time for them to make a buying decision. What percentage of them will actually buy? Your fit rate. What percentage of qualified accounts do you need to engage with so that one of those accounts will get to the last stage, right? So if I need to talk to 3 companies to get to the point where one, we're going to make a recommendation to buy, then my fit rate is 33%. And if I need to talk to 4, I need to propose to 4 customers so that one will buy, my closing rate is 25%. Now, if you're selling online, if there is no actual sales interaction, and therefore no formal pipeline, then what you got to look at is how many accounts do you need to have engaged on your website, engaged with your content to get to the point where they begin to fill out an order. Maybe they click on buy now on your pricing page, and how many accounts have to click buy now so that one buys, right? So you can do it whether you're selling actively or, if you think you've got a self-serve model. Both those numbers need to be understood. They combine, take your closing rate, multiply it by your fit rate. That's your win rate, right? We recommend separating those two because the 2 jobs there are very, very different. So if you're looking to be able to optimize things, being able to identify where the focus needs to be is helped by separating those 2 numbers, right? When those numbers are clear, you can then build out a demand generation model. So in this case, there's a company that's $30 million. Their 3-year target is $51 million. And so they need to generate $41 million of new business. Now, the reason that they need to generate $41 million of new business in this situation is because of their churn, right? This is a company this is actually an industrial company. This is somebody they tend to buy. They don't buy year after year after year. So the average lifetime is fairly low. So, we're sitting there and, this is a big issue. We're saying, hey, we're 30 million this year. We want to be 51. Hey, we just got to go $21 million. Well, when you factor in your churn rate, that number multiplies. They've got an average client size or an ASV of $90,000 in this case, which means that they're going to need to generate 455 new customers to generate that $41 million. It will net $21 million of new growth based on that churn rate. And so if their closing rate is 33%, they need to propose to 3 to get 1, and they need to engage with 5 qualified accounts to get 1 to the proposal stage. It means they're going to need to deliver almost 1,400 proposals over a 3-year period and work almost 7,000 sales qualified leads, right? And so when you have that clear, we can begin to identify what would it mean to increase the closing rate? What would it mean to increase the fit rate? That's going to help us determine, is it worth an investment? Is it worth attention? Where are things breaking down? And you can see by going, increasing a closing rate to 50% and a fit rate to 33%, you cut the total need by a pretty significant number. You need to understand what the economic model is, right? So that lifetime analysis, here's our $90,000 average sale at a 20% gross margin. In this case, we've got a 6-year average lifetime. So that's going to be about a 17, 18% churn. Means every customer we get is worth $108,000. So that customer is an asset that's going to produce $108,000 of gross profit. If we want to get 455 customers over the course of 3 years, we put a model together and we say, okay, so 101 in year 1, 152 in year 2, 203 in year 3. This shows you that you're producing $11 million of lifetime value in year 1. Then you can do a customer and cost analysis. So you're going to target your lifetime value to cost of acquisition to 18%, which means you're willing to spend just under $20,000. Or you could do it in reverse. I'm willing to spend $20,000, which equates to 18% of lifetime value. And that means to legitimately expect to generate 101 new customers at 18%, I'm going to need to spend almost $2 million. Right now, that $2 million should produce an asset worth almost $11 million. So, it's not a bad exchange, but I can tell you that I look at growth companies, serious growth companies, every day. And the number one mistake they make is they have totally unreasonable expectations for what the return on their investments are going to get. Right. And that just means that, I mean, I could create a model that will make anything look right, but it means you're making bad decisions. Right. And so your model is always wrong. And so you keep, the more you optimize, the more you go in the wrong direction. Right. So understanding that model is going to anchor a whole lot of things in the decisions that you're going to make around your execution strategy. Now, the first piece of the execution strategy you got to identify is, what's your positioning, right? How are you going to position yourself in your market? And this is where you need to be very honest, right? Take a look at your value proposition, take a look at the solution, the product, service, whatever you bring to the market, and ask yourself, which of these 4 quadrants does your proposition fall into? Are you offering a better solution to an existing market, or a solution that they don't have that's going to enable them to do things that they can't do, that is more expensive? So better solution, better outcomes, more expensive. Are you offering a better solution that's less expensive? Now, we all like to say that, but materially, how is it better? Is it truly less expensive? Do you offer a worse solution that's more expensive? Now, this is where RIM and BlackBerry, I think, found themselves, right? At one point they were a better solution, more expensive. And, as the iPhone became dominant, they moved to a worse solution, more expensive, right? There was a core market that needed the BlackBerry. There were things that the BlackBerry did that the iPhone didn't do. And what you saw was that BlackBerry began to try to chase the Apple model by saying, we do that too, right? If they had focused instead on, serving the unique needs where the iPhone didn't serve, they would have been able to generate more total return from the actions that they took. And more importantly, they would have saved a whole lot of money on some of the things they tried to do to win back market. And then the fourth one, which sounds not exciting, worse solution, less expensive. Stay tuned, because that's the one that everyone talks about, especially if you're in tech, but even today, if you're not in tech, right? So which one of these quadrants do you offer a better solution? Do you do the job better? If you do the job better, you're in the top half. If you do the job not as well as existing opportunities, you're in the lower half. Are you more expensive, or are you less expensive than the existing approach? Now, here's how to figure out where and how you're going to focus. That quadrant corresponds to the customer type you're serving. So if you are serving a better promise, more expensive, you're looking to serve underserved customers. Customers, a market segment that needs more than what's out there. Now, that could be that there's nothing out there. You're doing something brand new that hasn't been done before, right? But your job there is to help communicate where they're not being adequately served, where the status quo is not meeting their needs, and what the impact of that is. If you're better and less expensive, then that's the broadest market. You can basically serve all types of customers. If you're a worse promise, more expensive, then you need to identify the customers with limited options. And if you are a worse solution, less expensive, then what you're trying to do is identify who are the people that are either paying more for a solution, but they really only need a piece of it, or who are the people that aren't buying the existing solution because it's more than they need and they're not willing to pay that price. This will determine the strategy that you should anchor your go-to-market in, right? And shout out to Tony Olwick, who put this model together. There's actually a fifth component to it. I'm not going to discuss that today. It's called the Job to Be Done Growth Strategy. You can look it up online. right? So if you're serving underserved customers, you're going to implement a differentiated strategy. So again, that's better promise, more expensive. If you do what you do better than the options, you do the job better than the alternatives, and you're less expensive, you're going to implement a dominant strategy. And I would recommend that if you're implementing that strategy, if you you find yourself there, make sure you've got the resources to carry it out. That is going to be an expensive strategy because you're going to run up the front side of that product life cycle. Jeffrey Moore refers to it as the tornado. There's going to be tremendous demand, and you need to be prepared to handle that. You can always determine to go to one or the other. You can move to a differentiated or disruptive strategy if you don't feel like you have the resources to fully play a dominant strategy game. What you don't want to do is get caught in the middle. A discrete strategy, right, is the third one. That is you don't do the job as well, and you're more expensive, right? Part of the problem that BlackBerry had was they didn't want to accept the fact that there was a very small portion of the market. They continued to try to keep BlackBerry, as top of mind and brand focused. And as a result, they were forced more and more to play the game that Apple was defining. If they had taken more of a discrete strategy, who knows? They might be a very, very profitable business right now, serving the unique needs of a small set of intense users. And the last one, this is what I said, this is one that gets all the buzz today. That's the disruptive strategy. You don't do the job as well, and you're less expensive, right? You're serving underserved customers. Now, I got to tell you, the number of times I hear somebody say, we've developed a new technology, we've developed a new product, we just designed a new service. It's better than anything out there. And it is more expensive, right? And again, a lot of times the more expensive is because a large part of the market's just not doing anything right now. So this is that new capability that I'm talking about. And then they say, we're going to disrupt the market. No, you're not going to disrupt the market. That's not what disruptive means. Now, I say this not because, again, I'm not trying to be academic. I don't care if you qualify for the disruptive award at Harvard Business School. I'm saying that because that's not what disruptive strategies do. And you end up playing the wrong game there. When you're in that situation, you want to be in a differentiated strategy as opposed to a disruptive strategy. You see, one of the things that I think has happened is we've confused the term disruptive with discontinuous, right? You can be in any of these quadrants and your proposition could represent change. If the proposition that you're bringing to market requires the user to change how they do things, then you are discontinuous, and therefore you're going to be somewhat disruptive, but not in the sense of disrupting the market. Versus continuous innovation, which says you keep doing what you were doing, how you were doing it, you just do it with something different, right? So don't confuse disruptive with discontinuous. And the second step is define that positioning. My sense is for the people who are listening, you're going to either be in a differentiated strategy, a disruptive strategy, or a dominant strategy. You may be a discrete strategy that doesn't tend to be the company that attends these webinars, if you will. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. There are some companies that play the discrete strategy that are extraordinarily profitable. All right, that's clear. Your next step is now you define what is the sales model that you're going to implement. What's the game that you're playing here? That's the simple way that I'm going to describe sales model, right? There's 3 different archetypes. There's a lot of variations and nuances, but basically speaking, they're going to fall into one of 3 games that your sales organization is going to play, right? Are you going to have a programmatic sales game plan? That's a high speed, short cycle approach to the market. Not particularly effective if you're discontinuous and new, right? It can be a very good strategy if you're playing a dominant game, and there's significant market awareness and existing market demand. The programmatic model is not good for early stage. We'll talk more about that later. Right? That's the programmatic model. The second model is what we refer to as target and cultivate. It kind of mixes aspects of programmatic with big strategic account focus, what we refer to as named accounts. Right? So that target and cultivate is that in-between market, that in-between game, and then named accounts. Those are big, complex, long cycle. Right? So which game is the best game for you to play? Now here's how to figure out what the right game is for you, right? The programmatic model is best if you're looking at low change and not a lot of disruption, lower average sale value, right? So it's not as high consideration. Like if something's very expensive, it's going to typically lengthen the sales cycle and programmatic becomes less effective. What type of offering are you using? Where you are in the project life cycle, the product life cycle, what your purchase cycle looks like. Where's your positioning, right? Programmatic is good when you're the leader and there's strong awareness. If no one's heard of you, programmatic is going to be a hard game to win. And what level of existing demand is in the market, right? Programmatic is better when there's a strong level of existing demand. Target and cultivate is geared more when there's a moderate to high change or disruption, moderate to high sale values, very effective around service and new capabilities. You're looking at the first half of the curve of the product adoption life cycle, longer consideration cycles, so therefore longer sales or buying cycles. You're in a challenger position, or there's not a lot of awareness in the market about your solution. And low to variant existing intent. So there's not a lot of people that are actively looking. You know, if your market's overwhelmed with people that are actively looking and wanting to buy, then programmatic is in all likelihood going to be the right game plan for you for at least that part of your business. And then named accounts is really where things get big and complex. High change, high disruption, high value sales. If for no other reason, then this model is very expensive. Complex offerings. It can work in any phase of the life cycle. Purchase cycles, consideration cycles tend to be longer. Works if you're the challenger or strong awareness. And it tends to be what you'd go with if there's low existing intent. Now, if there's moderate intent, but it's complex and expensive, the target and cultivate would likely work. So you kind of interchange these to figure out what best fits you, and then you determine and you play that game. By the way, if you'd like some more information about how to play those games, we have a whole nother webinar and series of resources. Just let us know. We can share that with you. Alrighty, now it's time to go to the market. Now we're going to start communicating. We know who we are. See, the first three parts, they were all about figuring out where we're focused so that we can go to market with a focus. Now you got to translate that into clear messaging. But it's not enough to just tell people who you are and what you do. You got to communicate why it matters. We refer to this as point of view messaging. And there's 5 components that determine what good point of view messaging is. The first is that your message needs to be about the customer, not about you. And it needs to be focused on the unknown or misunderstood problems or opportunities that are facing the customer. If all you're doing is talking and communicating to the customer about what they already know, don't expect to be valued. Point of view messaging is relevant, important, and specific. And please note that relevance and importance are actually specific as well, I should say, are all in the eyes of the beholder. Strong point of view messaging challenges your prospect. It challenges your market's existing viewpoint or mental model. It changes how they think about things. See, you can't change how people think about you until you get them to change how they think about things. Point of view messaging is designed to initiate or deepen an investigative conversation or journey. Right? Point of view messaging is not why should I buy from you? It's why should I spend time with you? And it connects to a strength and distinct advantage of your company. That's the commercial part. See here again, the first 3 points of of point of view messaging, all about them. Fourth one, objective. Only one of them is really about you. Take a look at your message. My bet, if you're struggling at all, is 80% of your message is about you. Now, as you develop that message and you start thinking about the types of conversations and where you want to position those conversations, understand and determine what level of value do you want your conversations to initiate at, right? The lowest level of value is about product, right? If the focus of the conversation, if the focus on the message is about product, it's about commodity, right? Products are fungible. Even if you're the only person that offers that product, there are other options that are out there. It is the lowest level of value. And it is certainly where you, the vendor, the partner, whatever you want to call yourself, where you're perceived as being least needed. Now, slightly above that is talking about service. There's a little bit more variance to service. But today, once again, it's a very red market. As you move up from there, now we're talking about solutions. Now understand, you are not a solution. A solution is objective. By definition, a solution is product, service, vendor agnostic. So if you think you're talking about a solution, but you're talking about the solution is talking about your products or services as the solution, then you are at the product or service level. You're communicating hot red. Realize that solutions mean nothing if there's not a clear problem that I identify with. So to be able to enter at that solution level, to have that be your center of gravity, you have to be creating insights around that problem. Now, this is one of the things that's changed in the last 5 to 10 years. Solution used to be a great place to be. But today, because it's so overused and the differences and distinctions between different providers has gotten increasingly nuanced, solutions are have become anchored in the what's it cost side of the conversation. So solution, service, product, you're in a what's it cost conversation. Coming in at the advisor or partner level, that's where you're viewed as a resource. You're viewed as someone who can curate. You're viewed as someone who can help make sense of things. Right? That's where you begin to get into a what's it worth conversation. That's where you begin to get into a differentiated position. Right? When I view you as an advisor and partner, and to be an advisor or partner, you have to be perceived as communicating objective value to your target accounts, to your target prospects, right? Are you helping me? Am I doing better? Right? Is it easier for me? Are you making sense of the world for me? That's what it means to be advisor partner. So you have to be totally customer focused and customer relevant to come in at that fourth level. That's where, again, you begin to get that distinction and that difference. And the top level is outcomes. We perceive you, the conversation, the anchor, you're positioned around, core to the results that are important to the business. Right. So you want to identify your point of view messaging, delivering it to the level of value that you want to begin at. Now, if you're implementing a differentiated strategy, you got to be at that advisor or outcome level. If you're in a dominant or disruptive strategy, if you're dominant or disruptive and it is a high demand market, you can succeed as, a low price provider. We're going to strip the unnecessary things out. We're going to give you, the product that you really wanted without 100 other things. And we're going to save you some money in the process. Right. That's okay. That is a volume game. If you're in higher sale values and there is still more consideration around that, then again, you're going to want to anchor yourself into that advisor or outcome. And that decision is going to drive, in many ways, the most important part of your go-to-market strategy. And that is, do you have a powerful go-to-market story? Now, every good story has 4 components. So every good go-to-market story has 4 components as well. Every good story has a hero, a guide, a problem or an enemy, and a transformation. Right? The mistake, 80 to 90% of companies make this mistake, is they position themselves or their products as the hero. And please note, you are not the hero. Your ideal client profile and persona are the hero. Your story needs to put them in the role of the hero. You, your company, your product, your service, whatever, you're the guide. You're going to help them uncover and identify the barriers and opportunities preventing them from achieving what they want to achieve. You're going to identify what is their enemy. You see, for us, our customer's enemy is the traditional playbook. Our customer's enemy is the traditional way companies go about trying to grow their business, is actually making it harder for them to grow their business. You see, they keep doing the wrong things better. Right? That dominance and legacy approach is the Death Star. And with our guidance, they can overcome that barrier to attain the key outcomes that they're pursuing, inspired by what we're doing. So that's the fourth component of strong go-to-market, right? And all of the components that I've talked about so far anchor in the dominant place where companies for years have focused to improve growth, and that is do more, do it better, increase force. And the result of that is companies today almost all have good technology, good people, great content. But what they're missing is a strong engine. To make the go-to-market strategy work, you've got to focus on reducing friction. Realize your sales, marketing, and customer teams are losing 10 to 35% of their productivity and economic impact because there's too much friction, your systems are poorly designed, and there are other conflicts. It makes you harder to work with, and therefore it also negatively impacts the customer experience. As a matter of fact, the number one indicator to is someone going to be loyal to you is how hard do they think you are to work with. Making it easier for your people to operate, making it easier for people to work with you, that has a multiple benefit to the outcomes that you're looking to achieve. One of my favorite quotes of all time, amateurs talk strategy. And by the way, the first four parts of that are strategy. And I don't mean just the first four parts of the go-to-market that I talked about today. They are strategy. And I don't mean to say they're not important. But if you want a go-to-market strategy to be your cheat code, professionals talk logistics. And logistics is all about defining the structure. It's about aligning your go-to-market to how demand is formed and generated, where intent builds, how decisions get made, and basically turning your sales process into heuristic-based software. You've got to design and map your customer acquisition and success process, or you'll never be able to eliminate friction. You've got to think seriously about the tools that you're using, and you need to stop buying technology and instead hire technology. This is the map to use to hire technology. What are you hiring that piece of technology for? What's its job description? What is its job review going to be based on? And then ensure that you build strong, clear scoreboards so that there is one source of objective truth. Now, I didn't spend a lot of time on the reduce friction part. Again, we've got videos and other resources dedicated to that. But I want you to understand that if you nail the first four parts of go-to-market strategy, but you don't nail this, you'll get 10 to 20% of the benefit. Frankly, if you nail this with the go-to-market strategy that you already have in place, you'll pick up 30 to 40% of the benefit. If you want the cheat codes, you're going to bring them all together. Define the game that you're playing, your business model, your economic model. Choose one single positioning strategy. Determine the sales game that you're going to play. Tell a strong story. And remember, in the end, success equals how good is your plumbing. Now, we covered a whole lot of ground here. This is built on extensive experience in the market combined with some pretty extensive research as well. If you'd like to get a picture of how your go-to-market strategy compares to what we're talking about here, to identify key areas to address, where are your barriers, especially where are the hidden barriers that are holding your potential back? Because you got to this point of this webinar, we are waiving the fee. Typically, we charge a $5,000 fee for the revenue acceleration readiness assessment. Yes, that's a mouthful. We waive that if you've attended this webinar. We've got a couple other webinars that we waive it for as well. We will do a comprehensive review of your go-to-market strategy, identify key areas where there's conflict, where it's creating a drag, so you're having to work harder to produce otherwise the same result. If you're interested in that, once again, you can send me an email, doug@imaginellc.com. You can jump on our website and let us know you want us to talk to you. You can give me a shout out at Twitter @DougDavidoff. And last but not least, if nothing else, and you like what you heard today and you want to be able to get more, join the Sales Genius Network. Just go to www.imaginellc.com/salesgenius. We will be sharing workshops like this. We're launching some new exclusive content coming out in the next couple of weeks for the Sales Genius Network. So take advantage of that. And last but not least, we are at the beginning of February. Can you believe it? We're 1 month into 2020 already. It's a good time to be growing a business. Take a look at what you're doing, compare it to the key elements around a good go-to-market strategy, and take advantage of the opportunities that you see. Until next time, if we can be of any help or assistance, please don't hesitate to reach out.